We followed a lot of worker protests here during the coronavirus pandemic over things like a lack of hazard pay, a lack of paid sick leave, a lack of personal protective equipment to keep workers safe while they are on the job. We've covered the failures of companies to provide those sorts of protections that have led, for example, to meat processing plants having massive coronavirus outbreaks. Well, there's a new development here. Workers are organizing for what could be a potentially unprecedented, historic walkout across a number of major companies. We're talking Amazon, Instacart, Whole Foods, which is owned by Amazon, Walmart, Target, and FedEx. So this is a national movement that is sort of burgeoning here, planned for May Day.
Yeah, that's right. And Chris Smalls, who we've had on this show, is one of the organizers of this movement. He says we protect workers at all costs and take the power back. What they're asking for here is better health and safety standards as well as hazard pay. I mean, I don't think it's a crazy thing in order to ask for. And it does just highlight this is the real divide right now, which is that we have, like we said, with the meat industry. Of course, the meat industry is critical to how we operate right now, but asking people to go line, as we talked about with Smithfield Foods, line up all next to each other, very close. Many of these plants that were shut down due to coronavirus concerns. I mean, do you want people with coronavirus handling millions of pounds of meat bound for grocery stores?
Yeah, how do you feel about eating that meat, by the way?
I don't know about you guys.
Even if you don't care about the workers.
I might go back to being vegetarian, like the way I was raised. But the whole thing just reveals so much of how these people were generally treated in the first place. Like I said, as you know, like where I'm from, there are slaughterhouses everywhere. The meat industry is a big thing. I mean, it's a terrible place to work in the best of boom times. And even now when they're considered critical and they don't necessarily have the ability in order to bargain for protective equipment and all of that, it's just a very bad situation.
Well, and the workers we're talking about here, Amazon, Walmart, FedEx, these are the people on whom the society is totally dependent every day, but especially now. And they've been sort of invisibilized in normal times. Well, suddenly we have this mass realization of how absolutely critical and essential these workers are. That has given them, in a sense, new power, because they do have the power. If there was a mass movement and they were, disruptive to sort of those supply chains that everyone is dependent on, you realize that you need these people and you realize that they deserve a lot more and a lot better. At the very least, they deserve to have their literal lives taken seriously. And so, look, we've tracked the protest movements that have sort of cropped up on the right, which have been, partly astroturf, but also there's partly a genuine sentiment of rebellion there, which is completely predictable given the complete failure of the federal government to respond in an appropriate way. This is almost like an equivalent movement on the left that is starting to bubble up here. And, it started small with these individual actions across the country. This is the first time, and this is why I wanted to cover it, why I think it's so significant. This is the first time we're really seeing a national coming together across major companies in something that, it's not at the level of a general strike, but this is kind of the direction that these types of protests are heading.
Yeah, and we're going to keep an eye on these things very closely. I mean, this is certainly something that could enact real change, because actually spark a real conversation. Too bad, though, that our lawmakers aren't actually here to do anything about it. So,
well, and here's the other irony is we cover Chris Small, as you mentioned, who's an organizer of these protests. Amazon fired him because they wanted to make him. They actually, according to their memos, they thought he was inarticulate. What a bunch of morons. This guy's way smarter and way more effective than they are. All they did was elevate him and give him a platform to help further organize his fellow workers. Congratulations, Amazon. We'll have more Rising for you after this.